the breaking point. The Galactic Union Assembly Hall stretched before Ambassador Michael Torres like a cathedral of judgment. Crystal spires rose hundreds of meters into the artificial sky, and holographic displays flickered with the languages of 200 member species. Torres stood alone at the petitioner's platform, a small figure dwarfed by the massive chamber where the fate of civilizations was decided. His dark suit felt heavy on his shoulders, weighted not by fabric but by the burden of representing 8 billion souls who waited light years away for news that would never come. Above him, arranged in ascending tiers that seemed to reach toward infinity, sat the representatives of the Union's ruling species. The Corinthians occupied the highest seats, their crystalline forms refracting light into rainbow patterns. Below them perched the Thexari, insectoid creatures whose mandibles clicked in constant communication. The Varenthi floated in containment fields, gaseous beings whose colors shifted with their emotions. And scattered throughout were dozens of other species, each ancient beyond human comprehension, each regarding the human ambassador with expressions ranging from boredom to barely concealed contempt. Torres had rehearsed his speech 1,000 times during the 3-month journey to the Union capital. He had memorized every statistic, every accomplishment, every sacrifice that humanity had made in their 50 years of service to the Galactic Union. His hands gripped the edges of the platform as he began to speak, his voice amplified throughout the vast chamber by technology he barely understood. Honored members of the Galactic Union Council, I stand before you today representing the people of Earth and her colonies. This marks the 89th time that humanity has formally petitioned for full membership status within this assembly. We come not as supplicants, but as partners who have proven their worth through decades of loyal service. A ripple of sounds echoed through the chamber. The translator implant in Torres's ear interpreted them as laughter, though the alien vocalizations bore no resemblance to human mirth. He forced himself to continue, maintaining the diplomatic composure that had been drilled into him at the Academy. In the past 50 years, Earth has contributed 3 trillion credits to the Union Treasury. We have supplied 17% of the raw materials used in Union construction projects. Our scientists have worked alongside yours in research facilities across 40 star systems. And our soldiers have fought in every major conflict the Union has faced. High Chancellor Vextran of the Corinthian Dominion leaned forward, his crystalline body catching the light in sharp, cold angles. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like breaking glass. Ambassador Torres, your species has indeed made itself useful, much as a tool is useful to its wielder. But usefulness does not equate to equality. Torres felt his jaw tighten but maintained his composure. With respect, High Chancellor, humanity has met every requirement outlined in the Union Charter. We have maintained peaceful relations with all member species. We have adhered to every treaty and regulation. Our technological development has reached the threshold specified for full membership. What more can we possibly do to prove ourselves worthy? A Thexari representative rose from her seat, her carapace gleaming like polished obsidian. Your species is barely 2 centuries removed from your first crude rockets, Ambassador. The youngest member species in this assembly has been spacefaring for 8,000 years. You are infants playing at civilization. Infants who have given everything asked of them, Torres replied, his voice hardening despite his efforts to remain diplomatic. In the war against the Meridian separatists, human casualties accounted for 43% of all Union forces. We lost 2.6 million soldiers in that conflict. Men and women who left behind families, children, entire communities in mourning. We gave our blood for this union. A Varenthi counselor's colors shifted to a sickly green-yellow pattern. Your species breeds quickly, Ambassador. Your losses, while regrettable, are statistically insignificant. You can replace those numbers within a generation. 4 elder species, each life represents centuries of accumulated knowledge and experience. The word struck Torres like physical blows. He had known officers who died in the Meridian War. He had attended memorial services where children cried for parents who would never return. He had watched his own brother's name added to the monument wall on Earth, one name among millions. And now he was being told that those sacrifices meant nothing because humans reproduced too efficiently. Members of the Council, Torres said, struggling to keep his voice steady, I urge you to reconsider. Humanity has been patient. We have been cooperative. We have done everything you have asked without complaint or hesitation. All we seek is recognition as equals. A voice in the decisions that affect our future. The same rights and protections afforded to every other species in this assembly. High Chancellor Vextran's crystalline face remained expressionless, but his next words carried the weight of absolute finality. The Council will vote on Earth's petition. All in favor of granting humanity full membership status, indicate now. Torres watched the voting display materialize in the air above the assembly floor. Numbers flickered and climbed as representatives registered their votes. When the counting stopped, the results glowed in harsh, undeniable light. 194 votes against. 6 votes in favor. Earth's petition was rejected once again, by an even wider margin than the previous attempt. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds. Some species vocalized their satisfaction. Others made gestures with appendages that Torres's translator could not interpret but understood instinctively as mocking. The Corinthian delegates produced a chiming sound that their species used to express amusement at the misfortune of others. Vexran raised one crystalline limb, and silence gradually returned. Ambassador Torres, perhaps in another century when your species has matured beyond its current primitive state, we will reconsider. Until then, Earth should be grateful for the privilege of serving the greater good of the Union. This assembly is adjourned. Torres stood frozen at the platform as the representatives began filing out. Some passed close enough that he could have reached out and touched them, but none acknowledged his presence. He was furniture to them, a temporary inconvenience already forgotten. As the last of the councillors departed, Torres remained alone in the vast empty chamber, staring at the voting display that still showed humanity's humiliating defeat. His communicator vibrated against his wrist. The message was marked urgent, coded with the highest security protocols. Torres activated it with trembling fingers, and the face of Admiral Catherine Wells appeared in miniature hologram. Her expression told him everything before she spoke a single word. Michael, we have a situation. Horizon 7 is under attack. The world seemed to tilt beneath Torres's feet. Horizon 7 was Earth's largest mining colony, established 30 years ago in the Outer Reach territories. 800,000 people lived there. Families, scientists, engineers. Children who had been born under an alien sky but carried human dreams in their hearts. What kind of attack? Who? Torres demanded. Corinthian raiders. 3 war cruisers and support vessels. They're targeting the civilian sectors. Wells's voice cracked slightly. Michael, the Union defense fleet that was supposed to protect that sector. They withdrew 6 hours ago. Someone ordered them to redeploy to guard a Corinthian trading station on the other side of the sector. Torres felt something cold and terrible crystallize in his chest. They knew. The Council knew this attack was coming, and they deliberately left Horizon 7 undefended. Our nearest ships are 48 hours away, Wells continued. By the time we get there. Michael, I'm sorry. Early reports indicate massive casualties. The colony's defense systems weren't designed to withstand a military assault. They're slaughtering civilians. Torres disconnected the communication and stood in the empty assembly hall, surrounded by the monuments to alien civilizations that considered themselves his superiors. In that moment, something fundamental broke inside him. Not his spirit or his determination, but rather the last threads of hope that had kept him believing in this system. The belief that service and sacrifice would eventually earn humanity the respect they deserved. The faith that the Galactic Union represented something noble and worth preserving. He pulled out a second communicator, one connected directly to Earth's government on a quantum-encrypted channel that could not be intercepted. President Sarah Okonkwo answered immediately, her dark eyes searching his face for news she already knew would be devastating. Madam President, Torres said, his voice carrying a certainty that surprised even himself. I am formally recommending that Earth immediately withdraw from the Galactic Union. All treaties, agreements, and obligations should be considered null and void as of this moment. We are done serving masters who see us as nothing more than expendable tools. Okonkwo's expression remained grave, but Torres saw something else flicker in her eyes. Not surprise, but rather the look of someone who had been waiting for this moment, perhaps even hoping for it. The attack on Horizon 7? She asked quietly. Orchestrated with Union knowledge and approval, Torres replied. They sacrificed 800,000 human lives to protect Corinthian commercial interests. The defense fleet was deliberately withdrawn. Then we are in agreement, Ambassador. Return to Earth immediately. Transmit the formal declaration of withdrawal as soon as you are clear of Union space. The Charter requires 30 days notice, and we will honor that requirement. But after those 30 days, humanity stands alone. Torres felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. For 50 years, Earth had bent its knee to species that viewed them with contempt. For 50 years, humans had died in wars that served alien interests. For 50 years, they had accepted insults and humiliation because they believed they had no choice. That isolation meant extinction. That they needed the Union to survive. "What will we do, Madam President?" Torres asked. "The Union controls access to advanced technology, trade routes, and diplomatic relations across the galaxy. Without them, Earth and her colonies will be completely isolated." President Okonkwo's smile was cold and sharp as broken glass. "Then we will use that isolation wisely, Ambassador. The Union thinks we are weak because we have been obedient. They think we are primitive because we are young. They have no idea what humanity is capable of when we stop trying to please others and focus on our own potential. Let them laugh at our departure. Let them celebrate our isolation. In time they will learn what it means to underestimate Earth." Torres transmitted the formal declaration from his ship 3 hours later, once he had cleared Union territory. The message was brief and direct, citing Article 47 of the Union Charter that allowed any member species to withdraw with 30 days' notice. He included a complete accounting of every resource Earth had contributed, every soldier who had died, every promise the Union had broken. The document concluded with a single sentence that Torres had written himself: "Humanity came to the stars seeking partners and found only masters. We will not make that mistake again." The response from the Galactic Union came within hours. High Chancellor Vextron issued an official statement expressing regret at Earth's decision and warning that isolation from the Union would inevitably lead to humanity's decline. Other species were less diplomatic. The Thexari ambassador publicly predicted that Earth would be conquered by neighboring powers within 5 years. The Varenthi released calculations showing that human civilization would collapse economically without access to Union trade networks. Across the galaxy, the departure of humanity was treated as a minor curiosity at best, and a source of amusement at worst. But on Earth, something different was happening. In the hours after Torres's declaration was broadcast, crowds gathered in cities across the planet. Not in protest or fear but in celebration. Humans who had grown tired of serving an ungrateful galaxy, who had lost loved ones in wars that meant nothing to them, who had watched their species treated as inferior for decades, finally saw a path forward that didn't require them to bow before alien masters. President Okonkwo addressed the planet that evening, standing before the damaged monument on Horizon 7 where rescue teams were still searching for survivors. Behind her, the ruins of the colony stretched into the distance, a testament to the cost of trusting the Union. "Today, Earth stands alone," she said, her voice carrying across every human settlement from Mars to the most distant colonial outpost. "The Galactic Union has shown us that our service means nothing to them. Our sacrifices are irrelevant. Our lives are expendable. They see us as tools to be used and discarded. But they have made a critical mistake. They have forgotten that tools, when given sufficient time and motivation, can become weapons. For the next 10 years, Earth will be silent. We will close our borders. We will refuse all contact with the Union and its member species. And during that silence we will build. We will create. We will transform ourselves into something the galaxy has never seen before. When we return to the stars, we will not come as servants. We will come as a force that cannot be ignored, cannot be dismissed, and will never again be treated with contempt. This is our promise. This is our oath. And every species that mocked us, every counselor who rejected our petitions, every admiral who sacrificed our people for alien interests, they will learn what it means to push humanity too far." The transmission ended and Earth went dark. All communication channels with the Union were severed. Human ships withdrew from every Union facility and returned to Earth space. Ambassadors, scientists, soldiers, and civilians who had been scattered across 100 worlds came home. And behind closed borders, protected by defense networks and a determination forged in humiliation, humanity began the greatest mobilization in their history. The Union called it the Silent Decade, a period when Earth simply vanished from galactic affairs. They sent observers to monitor human space, but those observers reported nothing remarkable. Standard patrols. Normal commercial traffic between Earth and her colonies. No massive military buildup. No preparation for war. Just a species licking its wounds and trying to survive in isolation. The observers were wrong. They saw what they expected to see and missed what was happening beneath the surface. They didn't know about the factories being built deep underground, producing weapons and ships at a rate that would have been impossible a decade earlier. They didn't know about the scientific breakthroughs happening in research stations hidden in asteroid fields and on distant moons. They didn't know about the training programs that were transforming human soldiers from adequate troops into elite warriors. And they certainly didn't know about Project Thunder, the secret initiative that would change everything. Admiral Catherine Wells stood in the command center of Luna Base Alpha, watching as the 1000th warship rolled out of the construction facility. It was sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that no Union species had ever encountered. Its engines could propel it faster than any known vessel. Its shields could withstand firepower that would vaporize a Corinthian battlecruiser. And its crew, trained in tactics developed specifically to counter every Union military strategy, was ready to show the galaxy what humanity had become. 10 years, Wells said to no one in particular. 10 years of silence. 10 years of building. 10 years of preparing. I wonder if they're ready for what comes next. Her second-in-command, Commander James Rodriguez, smiled grimly. They're not, Admiral. They still think we're the species that begged for acceptance. They have no idea we've been building thunder while they slept. And across the galaxy, the Galactic Union continued its existence, unaware that the species they had dismissed as primitive servants was about to change the balance of power forever. They had no idea that their greatest mistake wasn't rejecting humanity's petitions for membership. It was giving humanity a reason to stop seeking approval and start seeking strength. The silent decade was ending. And when Earth spoke again, the entire galaxy would listen. The thunder returns. The war room of the Galactic Union High Command had never known true silence until now. High Chancellor Vextron stood at the center of the circular chamber, his crystalline form dimmer than usual, reflecting the harsh emergency lighting that pulsed in rhythm with the alert sirens. Around him, military commanders from a dozen species argued in overlapping languages while holographic displays showed the same horrifying reality from every angle. The Void Swarm had broken through their final defensive line. General Thorax of the Thexery military clicked his mandibles in agitation, producing a sound like breaking branches. We have lost 63% of our fleet in the past 72 hours. At this rate of attrition, Union space will be completely overrun within 30 days. 30 days and we have no reinforcements, no reserves, and no functional strategy that the swarm hasn't already adapted to counter. On the tactical display, the situation was rendered in merciless detail. The Void Swarm appeared as a spreading darkness, thousands of biomechanical ships that consumed everything in their path and converted the raw materials into more of themselves. They had emerged from the galactic void 6 months ago, and in that time had destroyed 17 Union colonies and crippled the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Every weapon the Union possessed had been tried and found wanting. The swarm adapted to plasma fire, to kinetic weapons, to quantum disruption fields. They learned from every engagement and emerged stronger. We need to contact the Peripheral Systems Alliance, suggested Commander Valeth, her gaseous form swirling with anxiety inside her containment field. They have remained neutral in this conflict, but surely they can see that if we fall, they will be next. The peripheral systems have refused all communications, Vextron replied, his voice carrying the weight of exhausted authority. They remember how we treated them when they sought membership. They see our current crisis as justice, not tragedy. We stand alone. The irony of those words was not lost on anyone in the chamber. For millennia, the Galactic Union had prided itself on being the supreme authority in the galaxy, the arbiter of civilization, the protector of order. They had accepted tribute and service from lesser species while denying them true representation. And now, when they needed allies most desperately, they discovered that power built on contempt was a fragile foundation indeed. Admiral Krythak of the Varenthi Defense Fleet gestured toward the tactical display with one of his energy tendrils. There is one species we have not contacted. One that possessed considerable military potential when they were members of the Union. They also made it clear, Krythak continued, that they held the Union responsible for the massacre at Horizon 7. That they withdrew because we used them as tools rather than treating them as partners. Perhaps the situation has changed enough that they would be willing to negotiate. General Thorax made a harsh chittering sound. The humans were adequate soldiers but hardly exceptional. Their technology was derivative of Union designs, their tactics conventional, their fleet small. What could they possibly offer us now that would make a difference against the swarm? They are a young species with nothing to lose, Krythak replied. And they have had 10 years of isolation to develop independently. At the very least, their forces could provide additional numbers to slow the swarm's advance while we develop new countermeasures. Vextron considered this for a long moment, weighing pride against survival. The choice should have been simple, but 10 years of unanswered questions about Earth's silence had created an uncomfortable uncertainty. The humans had vanished so completely, maintained such perfect isolation, that intelligence reports had grown increasingly speculative. Some analysts believed human civilization had collapsed without Union support. Others theorized they had fallen into civil war. A few suggested something more concerning, but those reports had been dismissed as alarmist speculation. Very well, Vexron finally said. Transmit a priority communication to Earth. Inform them of our situation and request immediate military assistance. Offer them full membership in the Union upon successful conclusion of the crisis. If the humans have any remaining military capacity, perhaps they can be useful one final time. The message was sent within the hour, broadcast on all frequencies that human monitoring stations would likely detect. It was not a request so much as an expectation, phrased with the assumption that Earth would be honored to serve the Union again. The communication detailed the swarm threat, outlined the catastrophic losses the Union had suffered, and concluded with an offer of membership that 10 years ago would have meant everything to humanity. 3 days passed with no response. The swarm continued its advance, consuming 2 more colony worlds and destroying another Union battle group. The war room grew more desperate with each passing hour, and some commanders began to question whether human civilization still existed at all. On the 4th day, a response finally arrived. It was a single word, transmitted in clear text with no encryption or ceremony: received. Nothing more. No commitment of forces, no negotiation of terms, no expression of sympathy for the Union's plight. Just acknowledgement that the message had been received, followed by silence. This is intolerable, General Thorax snapped. We offer them full membership, the very thing they begged for repeatedly, and they respond with a single word? The humans have grown arrogant in their isolation. Or perhaps, Krythak said quietly, they have grown strong enough that they no longer need what we offer. That possibility hung in the air like poison. The idea that humanity, the species they had dismissed as primitive servants, might have surpassed the Union in any meaningful way was almost inconceivable. And yet, the silence from Earth carried a weight that made even the most confident commanders uneasy. 18 days after Earth's cryptic response, the swarm launched its largest offensive yet. 3,000 biomechanical warships converged on the Nexus sector, home to 6 Union worlds with a combined population of 40 billion. The Union threw everything they had left into the defense, assembling a fleet of 2,000 warships from a dozen species. It was the last significant military force they could muster, gathered from scattered outposts and pulled from defensive positions across the entire Union territory. The battle began at the edge of the Nexus system, and within hours it became clear that the Union fleet was doomed. The swarm had adapted to every tactic, every weapon, every strategy the Union possessed. Corinthian plasma cannons that had once been the terror of the galaxy now barely scratched the swarm's adaptive hulls. Thexery quantum missiles were absorbed and analyzed before detonating. Varenthi energy weapons were countered by shields that seemed to anticipate and neutralize every frequency. High Chancellor Vexron watched from the command ship as his fleet was systematically dismantled. Hundreds of ships destroyed in the first hour. Thousands of lives lost with each passing minute. And behind the swarm, the colony worlds of the Nexus sector waited helplessly for the extinction that was inevitable. All ships, fall back to secondary positions, Vexron ordered, though he knew retreat was pointless. The swarm would pursue, would consume, would continue until nothing remained. Transmit final evacuation orders to the Nexus colonies. All civilians to emergency transports. We buy them whatever time we can. The Union fleet began its fighting retreat, trading lives for minutes while transport ships desperately tried to evacuate billions of civilians who had nowhere to run. The tactical display showed the swarm advancing like an inexorable tide, and Vexron found himself wondering if this was how it ended. Millennia of civilization, centuries of dominance, all brought down by an enemy they could not comprehend or counter. Then something impossible appeared on the display. 1,000 new contacts, emerging from quantum slip space directly between the Union fleet and the swarm advance. 1,000 ships appearing in perfect formation, their energy signatures unlike anything in the Union database. The tactical officer stared at the readings in disbelief before announcing what everyone in the command center had already begun to suspect. High Chancellor, we are receiving identification codes. The new contacts are human vessels. All 1,000 of them. The communication channels erupted with confused chatter from Union commanders trying to understand what they were seeing. Human ships, yes, but nothing like the vessels Earth had possessed a decade ago. These were larger, sleeker, radiating power signatures that exceeded anything in the Union fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, responding to commands with a precision that suggested either advanced AI control or crew training beyond anything the Union had achieved. A new voice cut through the command channel, speaking in clear and unaccented Union standard. This is Admiral Catherine Chin of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call 3 weeks ago. We needed time to consider our response. Vexrin activated his personal communication channel. Admiral Chin, this is High Chancellor Vexrin of the Galactic Union. We are grateful for your arrival, but I must inform you that the situation is desperate. The Void Swarm has proven resistant to all conventional weapons. Our fleet has been decimated, and I fear your forces, while numerous, may face the same fate. There was a pause, and when Chin responded, Vexrin detected something in her voice that made his crystalline form refract the light uneasily. It was not fear or uncertainty. It was confidence bordering on anticipation. High Chancellor, humanity spent the last 10 years in isolation for a reason. We were not hiding. We were building. You are about to see what Earth has become when we stop trying to earn approval and start pursuing excellence. All human vessels, this is Admiral Chin. Engage Operation Thunder. Show them what we brought. The 1,000 human warships moved as one, accelerating toward the swarm with a speed that made the Union vessels seem stationary by comparison. Their formation was complex, a three-dimensional matrix that seemed to shift and flow like liquid, each ship supporting the others while maintaining firing solutions on multiple targets simultaneously. The swarm responded as it always did, launching waves of attack craft and preparing to adapt to whatever weapons the humans employed. But what happened next defied every tactical prediction, every strategic analysis, every lesson learned from 6 months of brutal warfare. The human ships opened fire, and space itself seemed to scream. Beams of pure white energy lanced out, not the familiar plasma or particle weapons the Union used, but something fundamentally different. Where they struck swarm vessels, the biomechanical hulls didn't explode or burn. They simply ceased to exist, matter converted to energy in an instant of devastating annihilation. The swarm's adaptive shields, which had proven immune to every Union weapon, offered no protection whatsoever. What in the void is that? General Thorax demanded, watching as human weapons carved through the swarm like a blade through shadow. Quantum destabilization beams. Commander Rodriguez's voice came through on the open channel, apparently unconcerned with operational security. We call them erasers. They don't damage matter so much as convince it that existing in this particular space-time coordinate is no longer viable. The swarm can't adapt to them because there's nothing to adapt to. They either exist or they don't. But the human attack was far from one-dimensional. As the eraser beams did their terrible work, other human ships deployed weapons that seemed pulled from theoretical physics journals rather than military arsenals. Missiles that existed in quantum superposition, striking from multiple angles simultaneously. Fighters that phased in and out of normal space, attacking from impossible directions. Defensive screens that didn't just absorb energy but redirected it with perfect efficiency back at the attackers. The swarm, for the first time since emerging from the void, found itself facing an enemy it could not predict or counter. The humans fought with a creativity and adaptability that mirrored the swarm's own strengths but executed with a precision and coordination that the biomechanical entities could not match. Every time the swarm began to adjust to one tactic, the humans shifted to another, cycling through strategies with a speed that suggested they had spent years analyzing every possible combat scenario. Within 2 hours, the tactical situation had completely reversed. The swarm, which had been on the verge of overwhelming the Union's last major fleet, found itself being systematically destroyed. Human ships moved through their formations like dancers performing a choreographed routine of death, each vessel supporting the others in a display of coordination that left Union commanders speechless. Admiral Chen's voice came through the command channel again, calm and professional. High Chancellor, we are creating a safe corridor for your fleet to withdraw. I suggest you take it. We will handle the swarm from here. Vexrin wanted to refuse, to insist that the Union fleet would stand and fight alongside their unexpected saviors. But the tactical display showed the truth. His ships were battered and bleeding, barely holding together while the humans operated with casual efficiency. Pride demanded he stay. Survival required he retreat. All Union vessels withdraw through the human corridor, Vexrin ordered. Regroup at Rally Point Theta. As the Union fleet limped away from the battlefield, Vexrin watched the human ships continue their devastating assault on the swarm. More human reinforcements appeared, emerging from quantum slipspace with supplies and replacement vessels. It became clear that the 1,000 ships he had seen were just the first wave, and that Earth had resources far beyond what anyone had suspected. By the time the Union fleet reached Rally Point Theta, the battle was over. The swarm force that had threatened to end galactic civilization had been completely destroyed. Not routed or damaged, but annihilated so thoroughly that the tactical displays showed empty space where 3,000 biomechanical warships had been. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main view screen of Vexron's command ship. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp features and eyes that had seen too much war. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship was a model of efficient professionalism, human officers working at stations displaying technology that Vexron could not immediately identify. "High Chancellor," Chen said without preamble. "We need to discuss terms." "Terms?" Vexron felt his confusion manifest as discordant refractions of light through his crystalline body. "Admiral, you just saved billions of lives and preserved the Union from extinction. We are prepared to offer you the full membership that Earth sought for so long." Chen's expression did not change. "We don't want membership, High Chancellor. We don't want to join your club. We came here because the swarm represents an existential threat to all life in this galaxy, including humanity. We came because it was the right thing to do, not because we seek your approval or acceptance." "Then what do you want?" Vexron asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Respect," Chen replied simply. "The same respect you give to the Corinthians, the Thexari, the Varenthi. Recognition that humanity is not a servant species or a useful tool, but an independent civilization with the right to determine its own destiny. We want trade agreements as equals, diplomatic relations based on mutual benefit, and an absolute guarantee that no Union species will ever again attack human territory or interfere with our sovereign affairs." Vexron processed this carefully. What Chen was describing was not membership in the Union but a partnership with it. She was demanding that Earth be treated as a peer power, not a subordinate member. 10 years ago, such a request would have been laughable. Today, with 1,000 human warships still holding formation in the Nexus sector and the smoking remains of the swarm drifting in space, it seemed entirely reasonable. "The Union will need time to discuss this formally," Vexron began, but Chen cut him off with a raised hand. "No, High Chancellor. You don't have time. The swarm force we just destroyed was a scouting group. Our intelligence indicates there are at least 5 more concentrations of equal or greater size moving through this region of space. The Union fleet is broken. You have maybe 2,000 combat-capable vessels left across your entire territory. Earth has 5,000 warships, with production capacity to double that number within a year. You need us far more than we need you." The naked truth of it hung in the air between them. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that Vexron felt like he was experiencing reality from an entirely different perspective. For millennia, the Union had been the dominant force in the galaxy, and species like humanity had been grateful supplicants. Now, in the span of a single battle, Earth had demonstrated that they had surpassed the Union in every meaningful military capacity. "What you are describing," Vexron said carefully, "is essentially a military alliance between equals." "Exactly," Chen confirmed. "We fight the swarm together because it threatens us all. We establish trade and diplomatic relations based on mutual respect and benefit. And we both acknowledge that humanity is no longer willing to be treated as inferior. We proved ourselves 50 years ago with our service and sacrifice. We proved ourselves again today with our strength and capability. If that is still not enough for the Union to treat us as equals, then we will defend ourselves and our allies independently, and the Union can face the swarm alone." Vexron looked at the tactical display, at the 1,000 human ships still holding position, at the empty space where the swarm had been. He thought about the 63% losses his fleet had suffered, about the billions of lives hanging in the balance, about the 5 more swarm concentrations heading toward Union space. The choice was not difficult, though it required setting aside millennia of assumed superiority. "Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I accept your terms. Let us draft a formal treaty recognizing Earth as a sovereign power and establishing a military alliance against the swarm threat. I suspect there will be resistance from some Union members, but after today's demonstration, I believe most will see the wisdom of this arrangement." Chen nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. "Good. We will transmit detailed tactical information about the swarm's capabilities and weaknesses as we understand them. We will also offer technological assistance to help rebuild your fleet with upgraded systems. But understand this, High Chancellor. Humanity remembers how we were treated for 50 years. We remember the contempt, the mockery, and the lives sacrificed for a Union that saw us as expendable. We are willing to work with you now because the situation demands it. But trust must be earned, not demanded. And respect works both ways." The communication ended, leaving Vexron alone with his thoughts in the darkened command center. Around him, Union officers worked to coordinate the retreat and assess the damage to their fleet. But Vexran's attention remained fixed on the human warships visible through the viewport, their sleek forms representing a power that had emerged from humiliation and isolation to reshape the galactic order. 50 light-years away on Earth, President Sarah Okonkwo addressed a planet that had waited 10 years for this moment. Today humanity returned to the galactic stage. Not as servants or supplicants, but as a force that can stand alongside any civilization in the galaxy. We saved the Union that once rejected us, not because we seek their approval but because it was right. Because we are not defined by how others see us, but by who we choose to be. The galaxy learned today what humanity has always known. We are at our best when challenged, strongest when tested, and most dangerous when underestimated. Let this be remembered. Let it be known throughout the stars. Earth bows to no one. We stand as equals or we stand alone. And either way we stand. The broadcast ended, and across human space, in colonies from Mars to the farthest reaches of explored territory, people celebrated. Not just the military victory but something more profound. The moment when humanity finally stepped out of the shadow of species that had deemed themselves superior and claimed their rightful place among the stars. In the Nexus sector, Admiral Chin stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the last Union vessels disappear into quantum slipspace. Beside her, Commander Rodriguez smiled. Think they finally understand, Admiral? Chin considered the question. Some of them do. Others will need more convincing. But after today they all know one thing for certain. Humanity is done asking for permission to exist as equals. We took our place by force of achievement, and anyone who challenges that will learn why we call it Operation Thunder. The human fleet held position, ready to face the next swarm attack, ready to defend a Union that had once rejected them. Not out of loyalty or obligation but because it was the right thing to do. Because humanity had learned something during their 10 years of isolation that the elder species had forgotten over millennia of dominance. True strength was not measured by how many others you could dominate, but by how much you could endure and still choose to do what was right. The Union had treated humanity as tools, and in response, humanity had become something far more dangerous. They had become a civilization with nothing left to prove and everything to gain. And in the end that made all the difference. The thunder had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. Chin considered the question. Some of them do. Others will need more convincing. But after today they all know one thing for certain. Humanity is done asking for permission to exist as equals. We took our place by force of achievement, and anyone who challenges that will learn why we call it Operation Thunder. The human fleet held position, ready to face the next swarm attack, ready to defend a Union that had once rejected them. Not out of loyalty or obligation but because it was the right thing to do. Because humanity had learned something during their 10 years of isolation that the elder species had forgotten over millennia of dominance. True strength was not measured by how many others you could dominate, but by how much you could endure and still choose to do what was right. The Union had treated humanity as tools, and in response, humanity had become something far more dangerous. They had become a civilization with nothing left to prove and everything to gain. And in the end that made all the difference. The thunder had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same.